what's up, everyone, and welcome back to the End Zone Report. As always, I will be your host, Chris, and this, of course, is the show where we tackle the NFL. We have another awesome episode for y'all this week, reacting to Week 13 and previewing Week 14, which is a big fantasy playoff push for all of you that partake in the fantasy part of the NFL. It is also a big week for playoff scenarios and getting eliminated as far as the actual real season for the NFL. Bunch of teams are up and they have must win situations this week. Others will kind of keep rolling with what they are currently doing and are in good shape for the playoffs. Other teams have been eliminated already, and we'll run through that list coming up shortly. Before we get into all of the news, reactions, and previews, you can watch the show every week at youtube.com/the End Zone Report. You can also listen to the audio version on Spotify. Hit that subscribe, follow button. It helps out the show out a lot. This is the first year of the show, so I appreciate all the support so far. I've had a fun time doing this show for y'all every week, reacting to a crazy NFL season so far. Looking forward to finishing off the regular season and then jumping into the NFL playoffs. We will keep doing episodes every week up until the Super Bowl. And then after that, we will start getting into off-season mode where we'll have probably an episode or two every month. And then as the 2026 season ramps up, we'll get back to an episode every week. You can also check out the social media pages, Instagram, Facebook, and X for all the artwork that I post on the episodes, as well as NFL breaking news and other news related to the show. With that, let's head over and see what is up with the NFL after Week 13. Two major pieces of news came out this week. Adam Thielen was cut by the Minnesota Vikings, but then he was immediately claimed by the Pittsburgh Steelers, so he is now rocking the black and yellow. It's a shame that the Vikings didn't quite utilize him the way that fans hoped when they signed him back after leaving Carolina. But we will see how he gets acclimated into the system under Mike Tomlin, with Aaron Rodgers slinging him the pigskin every week. He did state that he wanted to join a Super Bowl tending team. I know the Denver Broncos were a team that were brought up a lot. I think as well as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with all the injuries they had. They also brought up, what was another team I saw get brought up? The 49ers were a team. They are still in playoff contention. I think the Seahawks and Rams, of course, were in the mix. But he is now playing with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are actually in the running for a playoff spot. The AFC North is still up for grabs. We're going to talk about them a little bit later on in the show. But he is a Steeler, and I think he will be. He's stated that he will be retiring after the season. I'm pretty sure he'll retire a Minnesota Vikings since he had such great years there with the organization. Granted, this year was not very memorable, and he did have a couple years in Carolina where he was productive, but I am about 99% sure that once he retires after this season, he will retire a Minnesota Viking. The other bit of news is actually a contract extension news, and surprisingly, Mark Andrews was extended by the Baltimore Ravens. That contract is worth up to $39.9 million over 3 years. $26 million of it is fully guaranteed. There was a lot of talk in the offseason and during the first part of the season that they could be parting ways with Mark Andrews, leaving room for Isaiah Likely. Isaiah Likely is currently unsigned by the team, so now it seems to have flip-flopped the two positions. They have decided to keep Mark Andrews long-term, and is most likely Isaiah Likely will be shipping out to a different team, which is unfortunate because Isaiah Likely has shown great promise as a NFL tight end. He's used a lot as a wide receiver, so he's kind of a gadget guy. He will be most likely finding another team this offseason, and hopefully a team that could definitely utilize his skills. This year he hasn't really been involved as much as he has been in the past. I know he had been dealing with a foot injury at the beginning of the year. Mark Andrews has been up and down, but he has seemed to be more acclimated into the system as he was past years. So we salute Mark Andrews for getting the big bag of cash, and we will see where Isaiah likely ends up signing in the offseason. So that is the two news pieces coming out this week. Looking at the injuries coming out of week 13, probably the biggest one was Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver of the Detroit Lions, suffered an ankle injury early on in that game. He has now been cleared and is marked active for tonight's game against Dallas. So he will be back in the lineup and ready to go. Justin Herbert, he dealt with a hand injury this past week. He left the game, leaving Trey Lance to start. He did end up having surgery on Monday. He is now day-to-day. We'll monitor that. I believe he is the Monday night game, so he does have... Yep, he is the Monday night game against Philly, so he does have time to heal and possibly start. If he does not start, of course, Trey Lance will get the start in his stead. Drake London, who has been dealing with that knee injury the last few weeks, he is now marked day-to-day. There is a possibility that he will be returning in the lineup, but if he does not return this week, he will most likely be Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, and then Bijan and Tyler Algier, of course. I think that they should just sit him this week. It is a tough matchup against the Seattle Seahawks, so I think if they want to make a push for the playoffs and keep him healthy, I recommend him sitting out. But he, of course, is an NFL player, and he's going to push to play no matter what. T. Higgins has been limited in practice this week. He has, of course, been dealing with a concussion. So he is possibly playing this week, which is great for Joe Burrow going up against the Buffalo Bills. He could definitely use another weapon against that Buffalo defense. Mike Evans, who has been dealing with a collarbone injury, could practice this week. I think I saw the latest news that he was limited. Let me confirm that here in 2 seconds. Mike Evans, where are you? Mike Evans was limited on Thursday. He feels that he has a real chance to return in week 14, so we will monitor that. I don't think that he is going to play, so that would leave Chris Godwin and Emeka Egbuka to get the start, but we will monitor that injury, of course. And then Sauce Gardner left the game early on for the Indianapolis Colts with a calf injury. It's looking pretty likely that he will miss this week's game against Jacksonville, which is unfortunate because they could definitely use him against that very important division game coming up this week against Jacksonville. So those are the big injury news. I will update you all on the social media pages as those come out with the Friday practices and Saturday practices for the Chargers and Eagles game. So let's head on to the storylines for Week 13. I've got 5 more storylines for y'all this week coming out of Week 13. The number one headline is Sam Darnold and the Seahawks shutting out the Minnesota Vikings. If you do not hear the stat or I guess we could call it the game stat, that is the first time Minnesota has been shut out since 2007. Seattle ended up winning that game 26-0. It was not a good game for the Minnesota Vikings. If you have not been noticing all the news headlines coming out this week, they have been wanting Kevin O'Connell's head on a silver platter. They want to tear down the regime. When I mean they, I mean the fans. Now all the rumor talk is circulating about Justin Jefferson requesting trades, wiping out the entire quarterback room and starting fresh. There's just a whole slew of different rumors and speculations going on after this 26-0 loss in Seattle. Going into this game, I knew that this was going to be a tough matchup for Minnesota. Seattle has been top 5, if not one of the top 3 best defenses in the league. Sam Darnold has shown that he is a very competent and talented quarterback in the system. JSN, who has been the number 1 wide receiver on the year. Now, of course, Minnesota did lock him up, which is kudos to that Brian Flores defense. Jackson Smith ended up with 2 catches for 23 yards off of 4 targets. So not a good game on offense. I mean, Sam Darnold only threw for 128 yards, 0 touchdowns. It was all defense. The defense intercepted the ball 4 times. Jason Myers, who's, I believe, the number 1 kicker now in the league, he scored most of the points. It looks like Charbonnet got the only offensive touchdown in this game. The rest of the points came from either Jason Myers or the defense. So not a good game for Minnesota. So they are the top headline this week. They played the Washington Commanders in Minnesota this week. So we will see. JJ McCarthy has been named the starter, I do believe. So we'll jump back to that game against Washington when we get to the game picks for Week 14. But that is your first headline this week, as Sam Darnold and the Seahawks shut out Minnesota Vikings for the first time since 2007. My boy Joe Burrow returns and gets the win against the Baltimore Ravens this past week on Thanksgiving. The Bengals won that game 32-14. It was all Cincinnati from the very beginning. If you look at the box score, Baltimore had the lead once in this game. Once the second quarter happened, Cincinnati just pressed down the pedal for throttle and came out with the win. This was a huge underdog game for Cincinnati going into Thanksgiving. Joe Burrow looked great. You could hardly tell that he was dealing with an injury. I know he mentioned that they were, if you saw the pregame interview that he did, he seemed very motivated for this game. I'm going to kind of paraphrase what he said, but he basically said when asked, why is he coming out to play tonight? He basically said, I'm getting paid to play and I'm just here to have fun for the fans. Right then there, when that interview happened, I knew I made the right choice in picking Cincinnati to win this game. Joe Burrow is going to be highly, highly motivated every single week going forward to get a playoff spot. I think if Cincinnati's able to clinch a spot, I think they could possibly make a decent run through the playoffs. Now, are they going to go to the Super Bowl? It's very unlikely with that offensive line and that defense. But with Joe Burrow back and healthy, if T. Higgins can stay healthy, if Jamar Chase can stay healthy, if Chase Brown can continue to be a key role in the running game for this team, I think Cincinnati could make a decent playoff run if they do end up clinching a spot. But their schedule is not looking great right now. They do have the Buffalo Bills coming up this week, which is in Buffalo, and I'll talk about that game more when we get to the Week 14 picks. But it's good to see Joe Burrow back in the lineup, and he looks super healthy. You couldn't really tell that he looked injured. He didn't miss a beat at all. Let me pull up his stat line from that game. He threw for 261 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and he did end up running a little bit. He had 3 carries for 8 yards. So it was a very good game for Joe Burrow. If you were gutsy enough to start him in your fantasy lineups, he did a decent week for you. So that is good to see. The Carolina Panthers upset the Los Angeles Rams. This game was really frustrating. Me and probably the rest of the country picked the Rams to win this game. The Panthers ended up winning 31-28. Bryce Young looked very, very good. He threw for 206 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and he did use his feet once more. He had 5 carries for 23 yards. Chuba Hubbard had the only rushing touchdown, and then Coker and Ted McMillan and Xavier Legette had passing touchdowns in this game. But yeah, the Panthers look good. You know, they're 7-6, which is very, very surprising going into the season, but they look like a legit playoff team right now. Bryce Young has been benefiting a lot from being benched, and it definitely shows. I mean, even Xavier Legette has been getting a little bit more involved. Ted McMillan has been the rookie that they were hoping for. And they have a great run game with Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle. Now, it's been very frustrating fantasy-wise with Rico and Chuba both in starting roles, but when you look at it as a NFL standpoint, it is very good that they have basically nailed down the run game. They have these wide receivers stepping up, and their defense has been pretty solid for most of the year. The Rams, on the other hand, going into this game, Stafford hasn't really turned the ball over, and he ended up throwing 2 interceptions. I believe he had 2 interceptions on the entire year going into this game, and then he threw 2 interceptions in the first quarter. So not the best game from Stafford, but he still ended up getting 243 passing yards with 2 passing touchdowns. He had 1 carry for -1 yards. Devontae Adams ended up having the only 2 passing touchdowns, and then Blake Corum found himself in the end zone, as well as Kyron Williams did. So it was a high-scoring affair, but the Rams just couldn't quite close the book on the Panthers. The Panthers ended up winning by a field goal at the very end. So very surprising outcome this week with the Carolina Panthers keeping their momentum this year and upsetting the Los Angeles Rams. The next storyline I have is one that I was not expecting to say going into the year, and that is the Chicago Bears are the number 1 seed in the NFC right now with their win over the Philadelphia Eagles on Black Friday. And with the Los Angeles Rams losing, they were able to step into that number 1 seed in the NFC. Now, will it hold? We'll find out. The Bears are currently 9-3, but we do have the Rams coming up behind them, the Seattle Seahawks. What are the other teams that are looking for that number 1 spot? I think that's it for the NFC, really. I mean, you have the Packers right behind the Bears. The Lions are not too far behind either. I mean, the Eagles are always going to be in the mix with their 8-4 record. And I mean, even the Panthers, who are, like I said, 7-6, they have, I mean, it's a much slimmer possibility that they hit the number 1 seed, but they are in the mix there. So we'll see how long the Chicago Bears can hold that number 1 seed and if they can finish the year off with that first round bye and home field advantage in the playoffs. But it was a really good game for the Bears, at least for the rushing game. Both running backs, Monungai and Swift, went for over 100 yards. Caleb Williams didn't do much in the passing game. He only had 154 yards and 1 passing touchdown, 1 interception. He did run the ball 5 times, but only for 13 yards. So this was a big rushing game for Chicago. And that Chicago defense held Jalen Hurts and the rest of the Eagles to only 15 points. Jalen Hurts did end up throwing for 230 yards. He did have 2 passing touchdowns, and he did run 4 times for 30 yards, but he ended up throwing an interception as well as Caleb. So this was a really, really low-scoring game. But once the Bears found some momentum going into the fourth quarter, they were able to seal this game pretty tightly. So bravo to all the Chicago Bear fans. It looks like Caleb is the quarterback that you've been waiting for, and that team has been really good under the new head coach, Ben Johnson. I don't know if you've seen that video of Ben Johnson of his shirt off, but that's been going around social media. But hey, kudos to him. The number 1 seed, I would be throwing my shirt off too and just screaming into the locker room with my team. So congrats to the Chicago Bears for currently being the 1 seed in the NFC. The last storyline I wanted to go over today from after Week 13, and that is the eliminated teams so far from playoffs. These are probably no surprise to you, but I just kind of wanted to update anybody that hasn't been following along with the NFL playoff scenarios. So we have the Cardinals, the Saints, the Titans, the Raiders, and the Giants all have been eliminated after Week 13 from the playoffs. We'll see who else gets eliminated after Week 14. We have some huge division deciding and playoff seeding matches in Week 14. So we will go through those during today's weekly prediction breakdown. But then before we head into the fantasy corner, we have one more thing to react to, and that is the incredible Chase O meter. Again, if you are new to the show, this spawned from a bet coming out of the mock draft that we did on the episode. So go ahead back into the old episodes and check out that mock draft we did. This spawned from Megan the Gridiron Goddess drafting Chase Brown in round 2 and Mr. James Martin not being on board with that pick. So this spawned a $20 bet on if Chase Brown will be a top 10 running back at the end of the season. We are now out of week 13, and Chase Brown is currently running back 16. I believe he was running back 16 last week. What's really holding him back is the touchdowns. He didn't get any touchdowns this week once again. I believe he hasn't scored a touchdown since like week 2 or something like that. I'm going to pull up his game log here and let's kind of just run through it, because that's really what's holding him back. He's getting the yardage. It's just he's not getting any touchdowns. So his only 2 touchdowns on the year are from week 1 against Cleveland, and then he ended up getting a touchdown in week 8 against the Jets. In that game with the Jets, he had a receiving and a rushing touchdown. So technically he has a total of 3 on the year, but only 2 rushing touchdowns so far this year. I think against Buffalo, if they can get into a position, I would like to see him finally get into the end zone, but I'm not holding my breath because they seem to be passing more in the end zone with Joe Flacco, and it seemed to be the case for Joe Burrow. So that's really what's holding him back from being a top 10 running back right now is those touchdowns. Now, if he can get touchdowns going forward from here, I think he can crack that top 10 pretty easily. But with the yardage, he's kind of floating there between running back 17, 16, 15. But this week, again, depending on your fantasy scoring system, in the standard scoring that I pulled my stats from, he got 18.3 fantasy points this week, 15 carries for 78 rushing yards. Then he did have 7 receptions for another 35 yards. So overall, still breaking 100 yards, getting very involved in the receiving game. But it's just that touchdowns that drought is just really holding him back from top 10. But like I said, if he can get some momentum going and some involvement in the red zone, especially within, inside the 10 and inside the 5, I really would like him to finally end this drought of touchdowns this week against Buffalo. Am I going to bet on it? Probably not. But looking at their schedule, let's pull that up a bit so we can see what is ahead for Chase Brown. So this week I said Buffalo, week 15. They've got Baltimore in Cincinnati. Then they've got the Dolphins in Miami. So I could see Chase Brown getting a touchdown there in Miami. Then we have them playing against the Cardinals. Cardinals defense hasn't been great either, so I could see Brown getting a touchdown there. And then to end the season, they have the Cleveland Browns in Cincinnati. That's going to be a tough one with the way Myles Garrett has been playing. So I can foresee at least 2 touchdowns in his future. Maybe with it being a big division game with Baltimore, maybe they can get within, the 10-5 yard line, and they give Chase Brown the opportunity to rush one in. So we could potentially get 3 touchdowns to cap off the year. But yeah, that's really what's holding them back right now is those touchdowns for cracking top 10. But we will revisit the Chase-O-meter next week after coming out of week 14, and we'll go over his stats against the Buffalo Bills. So let's head over to the fantasy corner for this week's hero and villain of the week. Okay, our hero of week 13 is Mr. Patrick Mahomes, quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs. He had 40 points in fantasy this week. Massive game for him. 23 completions for 261 yards. He had 3 rushing attempts for another 30 yards on the ground. And then he did have 4 passing touchdowns on the week. So he is your hero of the week if you started him in fantasy. Switching over to the villain of the week. It's unfortunate to have to say this, but Jackson Smith-Njigba, wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks, is your villain of the week. He only had 4.3 fantasy points against the Minnesota Vikings defense. He had 2 receptions for 23 yards on 4 targets and 0 touchdowns. He has been the number 1 wide receiver of the week, and to see an outcome like this is unfortunate because you most likely started him in your lineup. He probably cost you the win this week if you're trying to make a playoff push. If you're not yet in a spot to guarantee a playoff spot in your fantasy leagues. So I kind of jumping ahead a little bit on my bet this week, but I'm predicting that Jackson Smith-Njigba will bounce back this week against Atlanta, and he'll get back on track as being the number 1 wide receiver with a touchdown and some massive passing or receiving yardage for sure. So those are your hero and villain of Week 13: Patrick Mahomes and Jackson Smith-Njigba. Let's head over to Week 14 and go through the game slate. Before we break down the games, let's kind of go back in time and look at the pick tracker for Week 13. Pretty solid week again. We had 10 correct picks and 6 wrong picks. The Los Angeles Rams game was very upsetting. I ended up getting that one wrong. What was the other ones I got wrong? Let me get back to my scorecard here. Detroit Lions losing to the Packers on Thanksgiving. The Bears, of course, ended up beating the Philadelphia Eagles, so I got that one wrong. And then the other ones were the Colts against Houston, the Atlanta Falcons against the Jets, where no matter what I do, if I pick the Falcons, they lose. If I don't pick the Falcons, they win. It's that villainous team this year for me. I have one every year where no matter what I do, they end up disappointing me. I believe the Miami Dolphins last year were that for me in my picks. And then the other one I got were the Cardinals losing against the Buccaneers. Now, I originally picked the Cardinals because I was pretty sure Baker Mayfield was going to miss this game. But then he ended up getting announced as the starter. I was like, well, there's a possibility that the Cardinals could still win. So I'm going to stick with my gut and go with the Cardinals. And they had a chance to win there. They lost by a field goal. Same thing with the Falcons. They had a chance to win that game. The Colts one was very frustrating, even though going into that game, Houston had one of the best defenses in the league. And the Colts offense has taken a step back the last few weeks. So I knew that one was going to be a tough one. But there was an opportunity there for the Colts to win that game as well. So we're going to try again this week with our picks. I haven't gone perfect yet this week. I think the most that I've gotten right in a week was 12. I'm pretty sure it's either 11 or 12. So let's try to get back up into that range, or maybe even get 13 or 14. So let's pull up the game slate here. So Thursday night, which I'm recording this episode a little bit late, so actually this game is going on right now. I have not seen any of the score or stats yet for this game, but we do have the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Detroit Lions Thursday Night Football in Detroit. Detroit is favored by 3. The over-under is a whopping 54.5. So I'm going to end up missing the first quarter of this game, but once we are done recording this episode, I will jump into that game and get caught up there. But I am picking the Detroit Lions to win this game at home. I was very tempted to take the Dallas Cowboys, but with it being in Detroit and with the Cowboys defense being one of the worst in the league right now, and with the Lions losing to the Packers on Thanksgiving night at home, I just can't see Detroit losing back-to-back games at home. So I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions to beat the Cowboys. But I think this is going to be a shootout game. It's going to come down to probably a field goal, and that'll be between Aubrey and I'm not exactly remember who the Lions kicker is right now. Because they got rid of all these kickers are just getting fired this year. Okay, so they do have Bates still. Okay, so that's good. Bates is a pretty reliable kicker. He's not like on the level of Aubrey, so I'm a little worried there. But I think Bates can kick it in to the uprights if it comes down to that, or maybe it comes down to a touchdown and Jared Goff has got to sling it to St. Brown or George Pickens. Going into Sunday we have the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Seattle is favored by 7. The over-under is 44.5. Now, this is going to kind of depend on if Drake London plays. If Drake London does not play in this game, I think Kirk Cousins is going to have a really, really tough time against the Seattle Seahawks defense. Bijan, he's going to get fed the ball. And I think Kyle Pitts will probably end up being the number one target in this game. Darnell Mooney is not the guy to step into that Drake London role. So I'm guessing it's going to be really Kirk Cousins just kind of chucking it down to Bijan or Tyler Algier or Kyle Pitts. I think Seattle is going to pretty handily win this game, probably by more than a touchdown would be my guess. And with the Jackson Smith-Njigba disappointing production last week, he's going to bounce back and have a great game here. So do not worry if you have him in fantasy this week and you're trying to make a push for your fantasy playoffs, because I think he will bounce back. Same thing with Sam Darnold. If you are having to start Sam Darnold because of bye weeks, which reminds me, the bye weeks, if you are not aware, are the New England Patriots, the San Francisco 49ers, the Carolina Panthers, and the New York Giants. So you're without Jackson Dart, Drake May, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brock Purdy, Bryce Young if you were having to start him, Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle, Hunter Henry, Stephon Diggs. So massive, massive names there. Travion Henderson. So if you are in a pinch with quarterbacks or anything like that, Sam Darnold would be a decent start this week against the Falcons. The Pittsburgh Steelers take on the division rival Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore is favored by 6. The over-under is 42.5. They are tied for the division lead right now, so this is a massive playoff seeding scenario and division-winning game. I was kind of going back and forth in this game because Lamar hasn't been playing the greatest, and neither has Aaron Rodgers. But I did end up taking the Baltimore Ravens since they were at home. I think this will be a bounce-back game for Lamar. The Steelers' defense hasn't been really intimidating lately. Same thing with the offense. It's just all bad vibes around both these teams. I think they're worse for the Steelers right now with them chanting "Fire Tomlin" at the end of last week's game. So I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens, and we're going to see these Steelers slowly start to come crashing down to the end of the season. The Tennessee Titans take on the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland is favored by 4. The over-under is a abysmal 33.5. This is going to be a gross game. It's going to be all defense here. Both offenses haven't been great. I think Shadur might probably have a better game than Cam Ward. Myles Garrett is going to be eyeing down that sack record, and he's going to sack Cam Ward probably multiple times in this game. So I am picking the Cleveland Browns just solely based on their defense, and I think Shadur Sanders can get the offense moving enough to where they can win this game at home against a rookie quarterback. The Indianapolis Colts take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Indianapolis is favored by 1.5. The over-under is 47.5. This is a huge playoff scenario, division-deciding game. This is my matchup of the week. I had a tough time picking the winner of this game because both teams have really shown their improvement throughout the season. I ultimately ended up going with the Indianapolis Colts. But I can be convinced that Jacksonville might end up winning this game. They are home. I was tempted to take them because of that. But I think this will be a bounce-back game for Daniel Jones, Jonathan Taylor, and that Colts offense. So I'm going to go with the Indianapolis Colts to beat the Jaguars and take the number 1 spot in the AFC South. The Washington Commanders head over to Minnesota to take on J.J. McCarthy and the Vikings. Minnesota is actually favored by 2. The over-under is 42.5. Now, there is a possibility that Jaden Daniels plays in this game. I originally had the Washington Commanders as my pick in this game, but as I thought it over, I saw that it was in Minnesota. J.J. McCarthy is going to come back. And with the Brian Flores defense, shutting down Jack Smith and Jigba like they did last week, I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings. and I'm going to close my eyes and just roll with it. Regardless of Jaden Daniels or Marcus Mariota as a starter, I think Brian Flores is going to shut them down with that defense. And if JJ McCarthy is going to have any kind of bounce back game this year, it's going to be against the Commanders and it's going to be against the Dallas Cowboys. So he's got a really good back-to-back week matchups that could save his starting job. If he ends up continuing to be a humiliating quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings this week and next week, that's it for his career. He's going to be a glorified backup the remainder of his career. Now, if he's able to bounce back in this game and next week, that's going to look good for his career. So I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings, and I'm going to close my eyes and just roll with it. The Miami Dolphins take on division rival New York Jets. Miami is favored by 3. The over-under is 41.5. This was an easy pick for me. I'm taking Miami. I like Achane. I like Waddle bouncing back in this game. Darren Waller is somebody that they need to get back involved into this offense. The Jets is just all bad vibes in the Jets. Tyrod Taylor is going to get the start here. They're not using Breece Hall like they should, and they pretty much sold that defense during the trade deadline. So I'm going with Miami to win this game. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up winning by multiple scores against their division opponent. The New Orleans Saints take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is another division game. Tampa Bay is favored by 8.5. The over-under is 41.5. I was tempted to take the Saints here, but I do not have the guts enough to take them. So I'm taking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to take out their division opponents. But Tyler Shuck has been pretty surprisingly good this year. No Alvin Kamara, so Devin Neal, the fellow rookie, will get the start. Olave is banged up, so we will keep you monitored there on his status for Sunday. If he does not play, it's going to be pretty difficult for Tyler Shuck to get anything going on offense. But I'm going to go with the Bucs. With potentially Mike Evans coming back, I don't think Mike Evans is going to come back. But even with Emeka Egbuka, Chris Godwin, Cade Otton, I think Baker Mayfield and the run game can take out their opponent and win this game pretty handily. So I'm going to go with the Bucs this week against the Saints. The Cincinnati Bengals take on the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are favored by 5.5. The over-under is a whopping 53.5. This is the second highest over-under of the week. Now, this is going to be my risky business pick of the week. I'm going with Cincinnati to win this game on the road against Buffalo. Now, you probably think I'm crazy or on some kind of medication. I assure you I am not. I am thinking very straight. I'm going to back my boy Joe Burrow. He looks like he's going to be getting T. Higgins back, and they're going to pass the ball like crazy against Buffalo. So I'm going to shoot for the moon, and I'm going to take Cincinnati to win this game on the road. They need to basically win out to have a spot in the playoffs. I think the best record that they could have if they win out is 9-8, with a little bit of help from people around them. But I'm going to pick Cincinnati to upset the Buffalo Bills in this game. Now, Josh Allen, he's probably going to feed off of this terrible Cincinnati defense, which explains the very high over-under. This is pretty much probably going to be a shootout, I hope. You're going to have a lot of James Cook probably on the ground, a lot of Chase Brown in the receiving game. But if it comes down to it, I think Joe Burrow is going to get the job done with multiple touchdowns to the air and win this game against Josh Allen. But I'm very excited. So this was almost my matchup of the week. But with all the playoff scenarios and the division deciding factor of the Colts-Jaguars game, I made that one my matchup of the week. I'm super excited for that. But I'm very excited for the Joe Burrow, Josh Allen face-off. Another reason why I didn't make it my matchup of the week, because there's a possibility that Josh Allen just annihilates the Cincinnati Bengals defense, and I'm completely wrong, and this ends up being a huge game in Buffalo's favor. But I think either way, the Colts and Jaguars game is going to be a huge huge game this week. Like, it's going to be either a shootout or it's going to be a very, very tough defensive, low-scoring game. But I'm very, very excited for Joe Burrow going against Josh Allen. Super excited. My Denver Broncos take on division opponent Las Vegas Raiders. Denver is favored by 7.5. I'm not surprised. I'm surprised that they're not favored more with that defense. The over/under is 40.5. Geno Smith is leading the league in interceptions. I think he's tied with Tua right now. Raiders really don't have much going on with them. Max Crosby, you can tell, is frustrated on the sideline with the defense. They really have Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty on offense. That's it. Geno Smith's probably not going to be with this team next year. It's very possible Pete Carroll's not with this team either. So it's just all bad vibes around the Raiders right now. Denver is still on their hot streak with Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton, and now RJ Harvey taking over the lead role after the J.K. Dobbins injury. Evan Ingram got more involved last week. What's holding Denver back is weapons for Bo Nix. Like, Cortland Sutton's great, but Bo Nix needs more than just Cortland Sutton. Now, the run game with RJ Harvey is very promising. I think he's going to have a bright future as an NFL running back. The defense is what really is making the Broncos so elite right now with their record going 10-2, and now possibly 11-3 if this game goes the way that myself and even Vegas predicts that this is going to go. But yeah, in the offseason, Denver really needs to look at that wide receiver room and get Bo Nix some weapons. But I am taking my Denver Broncos, of course, to take down the very disappointing Las Vegas Raiders. And if you remember my initial preview of the season, I was very excited for the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm very bummed out that this didn't go the way that I was hoping it would. They are one of the worst teams in the league. I think they've only won 2 games on the year, and now it's just all bad vibes with the Raiders right now. It's just very disappointing with what the roster looked like at the beginning of the year to where they are now. It's just very disappointing. The Chicago Bears take on the Green Bay Packers for a battle of the NFC North. Green Bay is favored by 6.5, probably because they're in Lambeau. The over/under is 44.5. Now, I originally had Chicago Bears winning this game, but then I looked again and saw that it was in Lambeau, and I'm going with the Packers on this one, even though I really freaking hate it. This is the one that I would be okay with getting wrong if the Chicago ends up winning this game. But it was a very, very tough game to pick. I really wanted the Chicago Bears, but the more I thought about it, with it being in Lambeau, with the division on the line, with the playoff seeding on the line, I think the Packers are going to be very extra motivated, and they're going to bring the Chicago Bears back down to earth after their massive win of being the number 1 seed after their win over the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm going with the Packers, even though I hate it. And I kind of, if this would be the only wrong pick I get this week, I would still be happy with my record with these picks. But I'm gonna go with the Packers. I think they're gonna end up winning this game. The Los Angeles Rams take on division opponent Arizona Cardinals. The Rams are favored by 8.5. The over/under is 47.5. I'm taking the Rams here. They lost to the Panthers last week. They're going to bounce back, and they're going to pretty much annihilate the Cardinals, I think, this week. Jacoby Brissett's probably going to still throw for 250 to 260 yards through the air. Seems like Trey Benson's not going to play this week. If he does not play, that'll be it for him in the season. His 21-day window will close if he does not play in this game. Marvin Harrison is still banged up, so there's a chance that he's not going to play, which leaves Michael Wilson, Trey McBride, and Greg Dortch to get the ball from Jacoby Brissett, who has been incredible since his start. But yeah, I'm taking the Los Angeles Rams here to bounce back from their loss against the Panthers. Stafford's probably going to have a huge game. Devontae Adams is going to most likely get a touchdown because he has been getting a touchdown every week. I think Puka is probably going to end up in the end zone. Kyron Williams is going to get productivity on the ground because the Cardinals defense, you can push them over on either side receiving or rushing. So I think it's all going to be all Rams in this game for sure. Sunday Night Football, we got the Houston Texans taking on Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. Kansas City is favored by 3.5. The over-under is 42.5. Now, I was tempted to take the Chiefs, but I am not a fan of the Chiefs right now, so I am going to be taking the Houston Texans. With that defense, I think they're going to be making things very difficult for Patrick Mahomes in that offense. CJ Stroud has been looking better since coming back from his injury. And that defense for the Texans is just top notch. So I'm going with the Houston Texans on the road, prime time, taking down Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Now, if the Chiefs end up losing this game, I think their playoff odds drop to like 15% or 14%, something like that. If they end up winning this game, I think they have like a 60% chance of making the playoffs. I think their current percentage right now is like 55, so not a huge bump if they win this game, but they pretty much have to win out. Unless they might be able to like lose one game, but it'd be very difficult if they end up losing a game later on. But if they lose this one to the Texans, that's pretty much it. It's tough coming back from 15% chance of making the playoffs. So this game's pretty much the Chiefs season, and it's funny that they put it on prime time, so the whole world can watch this game unfold. But I'm going with the Houston Texans to take down the Chiefs and to basically kick them out of the playoffs. Our last game of the week, Monday Night Football, is the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. Philly is favored by 3. The over-under is 40.5. If Justin Herbert ends up not playing, I could see that line drastically moving in favor of Philly. I did take Philly in this game to bounce back from their loss on Black Friday to Chicago. Even if Justin Herbert plays, I think Philly is going to be really motivated to win this game, gunning for that number 1 seed in the NFC. And the Chargers have been pretty disappointing all year. It's been really hot and cold with them. Now with this hand injury from Justin Herbert, that's not helping out. There's a possibility that rookie running back Omarion Hampton will be coming back. If not, Vidal has been really great for this offense, so he'll get the start once again. But it's been really disappointing for the Chargers and Charger fans. So I'm going with Philadelphia Eagles to wrap up Week 14. So that is the games for Week 14. We'll see how many I can get right this week. I'm shooting for 13, 14. Maybe even all of them correct. So let's end the show like we always do and see if we can get show the money. So I haven't really had much luck with the DraftKings lineups the past few weeks. So we're going to switch back over to the Sleeper app and we're going to do some prop bets here. So I like to do 6 legs of my parlay when I do these. So I've got 6 that I'm going to do here for you. I've got a doubleheader here. We got Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua both taking the over on the anytime touchdown. I think both of them are going to find the end zone this week. Puka Nacua hasn't seen the end zone since week 9 or week 8. Devontae Adams, of course, has had at least 1 touchdown in every game, multiple touchdowns most of those weeks. I'm going to bet on both of these receivers getting in the end zone this week against the Cardinals. Saquon Barkley, I'm going to also take the over on his anytime touchdown. He hasn't had a touchdown since week 8. I think he's going to get one against Chargers on the Monday Night Football. So as long as he doesn't get vultured by a freaking tush push, I feel pretty confident that Saquon is going to find himself in the end zone finally on prime time. Patrick Mahomes, I'm going with the over on his rushing yards. His line is at 20.5. He's averaging about 30 to 35 yards a game. So I'm going to go with the over there. And with the Houston Texans defense being top notch, I think they're going to make it very uncomfortable for him, forcing him out of the pocket, and he's probably going to have to run to save drives. So I'm going to go with the over there. Cam Ward going against Cleveland. I'm taking the under on his passing yards. That line is currently at 182.5. Myles Garrett's going to have Cam Ward's picture in the locker room, and he's going to be dreaming about sacking him about 6 times. So I'm taking the under definitely against the Cleveland defense. And then to finish off the bet this week, I kind of mentioned it already, Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think this game against Atlanta is going to be a bounce-back game for him. So I'm taking the over on his receiving yards. His line is currently at 90.5. So that is my bet for the week. This is a $5 bet. If it hits on all 6 of these, I will win $220. Ka-ching, ka-ching. So let's cross our fingers and hope that we get this bet and get some of our money back from the year. So that'll do it for this week's episode of the End Zone Report. Tune in next week for the reaction to the Week 14 and the preview to the Week 15, which will be the first week of fantasy playoffs. So with that, I will say good luck to everybody on your final regular season push in your fantasy teams. We'll see if we get more eliminated teams in the NFL playoff scenarios. So good luck to everybody in your betting, your fantasy, your picks that you do, whether it's for work or home or whatever it is you do. So good luck to everybody on the outcome of Week 14, and we will see you all at the end of this week's.